All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the recording of the November Your Work workshop. This is the Plan Your Year session. I am waiting now for our participants to gather back in the room together where we will jump in to our lessons learned from the discussion. If you would love to participate next time in these small group, warm, interactive discussions, I hope you go to simplescrapper.com/workshops and sign up for the next one. We'll be continuing these in 2021, and I can't wait to share all the fun little changes we'll be making. But these have been such a great experience, and here they are. Welcome back. We are now officially recording, so put on your best hats and let's jump into the discussion here. So I have challenged you to think about lessons learned, takeaways, something interesting or new or fun that you heard today. So just to recap our questions, they were, what was the most fun you had this year? In what ways were you the most productive? And how does your life connect to your scrapbooking when it comes to that productivity? Did you make any creative course corrections this year? And what might you do differently next year? All right, I can't wait to hear what you guys all had to say. Who is going to volunteer to go first?
It came up in more than one group that having other people to scrapbook with, whether in person or during like a Zoom prop kind of thing, was really motivating for a lot of us. It like got us to do it. You know, if we kind of made an appointment that, oh, the Zoom prop starts at 2, so I'm going to sit down at 2 and I'm going to be there.
Yes.
Scrapbook that, rather than just, yes, I'm going to scrapbook sometime on Saturday. You know, so that was something that seemed, and it came up not only in the group that we were talking about what we had fun doing, but it came up in other topics too, that like getting together with others was very helpful.
That's awesome. That's so good to hear. It is, and specifically the thing that you mentioned about having the specific time rather than the general time, because there's ways you can hang out with people. You could just be in a forum or whatever on Facebook, but that's not a specific time which you're going to show up and take action. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks, Laura.
And related to that, I think not just on the calendar, but specifically community engagement, like people showing up and being with people, you know, people expecting you to be there, and not just in the crops, but in, you know, like we talked a little bit about like Scrap Smarter and how just exciting that was as a community event. And you know, and we talked about like, you know, how some of us have been reading more because we've had book discussions in the, you know, on community threads of, you know, that just gets you excited and engaged, more than just an event on the calendar.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And there's just that sense of camaraderie around it that really makes a difference. I see lots of nods. All right. What else?
Yeah, sorry for the fun thing. That was pretty much what I heard from most people this year, or for this year, was just the constant, the cropping. And it really was more of the upside to this kind of icky year was the fact that I think that people that would not have necessarily reached out for that kind of engagement were home and you know, searching for their tribe while they were home. And I'm hoping that some of those people in the long run know now that we do have that support, you know, in with all of our ladies and whoever else wants to join, and that, you know, we're kind of all here to help each other, you know, with our goals and move forward versus just being a community where we do just post on threads once in a while or post a photo of something. You know, we really are real people that talk to people and, you know, remember, you know, if you were having surgery or if you were, you know, if you had a project you were working on and things. So I think that that growth of connection this year has been kind of surprising and at least for me very heartfelt.
Well, and just so important this year and feeling so connected to other humans. And if you're like me, you're home with a child too, so connecting to other adults after having, you know, gone off to a workplace and haven't been there now since March, connecting to other adults has been very helpful. All right, what else?
think one thing that came up in several groups was the idea of just the permission to like let go of like whether it's like your preconceived expectations or like this idea of like finishing a book or a class, or maybe it's some product that you bought for a project that you do not like. So you can just like let that go and then just move forward with like what is exciting you at this time. And then also I had a kind of a big insight. So the whole idea of like where I was productive, I feel like it's always right, like managing like the home and the yard and like the kids, like everything. And my thought was that it's because it's all like on like a to-do, like a task manager thing, and it's just scheduled. I was thinking like I need to like schedule it, right? To if I want to like apply that to my creativity. But I also think, and this came up in the very last group, the idea that I'm kind of on an autopilot when it comes to like folding laundry or like cleaning a bathroom. Like I don't have a lot of decisions to make, right? Like I know what I'm doing. But when it comes to creativity, there's all these decisions, and sometimes that can feel overwhelming. So the idea of maybe trying to see, and then we've talked about this before, like having like a starting point, right? Like white background, these products or whatever, this go-to kind of like, I don't know what it would all be, but maybe to eliminate some of that decision-making to get me started. And then once I'm going and I'm in the flow, I'm fine. Sometimes it's that initial, we always talk about that initial energy to get going. That was actually like a big insight that I've never really thought about it that way.
That's so awesome, Kim. I think that, yeah, so many things you mentioned, we've talked about on podcast episodes as well. And I think you mentioned multiple different tips, not only just reducing the decisions, but having something ready for you in a different setting. Like do the decision work when your brain is ready to do that. And then when you have the creativity and the time to be creative, you've made the decisions and you can jump right in. So that's awesome. Thank you.
One of the things that we talked about is kind of right along that same line. And one of the things that I struggle with is not having huge blocks of time. And I'm a very slow scrapper, so I know it takes a lot of time. And so one of the things that we talked about in several groups was being able to set aside 15 minutes a day, and maybe that 15 minutes is getting photos ready. And so one of the things that I want to do for this year is to kind of continue that and have just like little project trays or something like that where I'll gather photos, and then maybe my next 15-minute exercise is getting papers or embellishments, or oh, I really want to use this particular glitter glue on this, whatever it is, and just kind of setting aside those small items and taking, again, those decisions, they're done. And so when I do have 2 or 3 hours to sit down and talk, it's done. It's easy to just sit down, actually work through it, and kind of go from there. So I'm all up for brainstorming any ideas anybody has for what can you do in 15 minutes easily, and can I commit 15 minutes each day to do it? Sure, that's easy to do. So.
Well, also, I think that you say you're a slow scrapper, but maybe some of that is that decision-making time. And maybe at the end, you're actually a little bit faster when those decisions have been made for you.
Absolutely.
That also reminds me of on this week's podcast episode with Allison, she mentioned a tip that I think I heard before. And I don't know if originally Shamel talked about it in her album class that she taught years ago, but this idea of not even having just project trays, but taking your things and actually putting them in a page protector and putting it in the album where it's going to go. And then when you're flipping through that album looking for gaps and you want to fill in the gaps, and you have the things, the photo, a sketch, supplies all ready to go. And then not only do you have the things, you know exactly where it goes when you're done. That's just really setting yourself up for success. All right, what else? These are awesome. I really love the conversation about sometimes it is the people and the connection. And, I know a lot of us are introverts. You guys know I'm an introvert. We could still have people time and that supportive connection without talking all the time and feeling drained from it. It's just someone's just there with you, and that can just be really helpful to keep you on task and moving forward. And sometimes that really makes more of a difference than any of the other decisions in your scrapbooking and how you're doing it. You just need to create that container in order to do your thing. And I think that's one of the things that we really excel at here at Simple Scrapper.
One of the things we talked about, especially in the doing something differently, I have a trip album that I need to get done, and I've just been putting it off because there's so many pictures and so many things, and it was 3 years ago, and I've got to remember and go back to notes and see calendar and whatever and see what we did. And I've done another trip album this year that I did a daily thing of what we did and what we ate and everything for that day. And I think I'm deciding that I'm going to do this one in a different way because there is so much, and it was 3 years ago, and group things like several pictures of the foods we ate during the trip, several pictures of the things that we saw or the places we went, and do it that way and see, and then maybe just some pocket pages of a lot of the scenery and stuff, and just see if that'll help me get started and get it going and get it done rather than keep putting it off.
I love that idea, and I often recommend that type of strategy of categorizing things and grouping like things together. And you can even see how it feels, and maybe it'll spur you to tell some stories separately, but having those shortcuts really does get the ball rolling.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's terrific. All right, what else? Maybe we'll take a couple more here. We are already past the time. How is that possible?
I think a lot of what I was hearing as far as doing things differently this year is that some people just did not scrapbook that much this year, and they chose to do other, crafts that were meaningful to them because that's what they needed for the year. And now they're excited to get back to it in 2021. And, I took up an additional craft this year. I'm still scrapbooked, but I think that that's really important to know when enough is enough. And like, you just need to do something else so that you can, maybe scrapbooking is just a little bit too intense right now. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just too heartfelt and too much, and emotionally you need to do something else.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the downsides of it being about our lives. When our lives are on a roller coaster, then it can be hard to document that at the same time. Sometimes if you normally think of a normal ebb and flow like this of our own individual creativity and our creativity collectively, I think it's been a much wider swing there were people who scrapbooked so much more this year than they ever had before because they somehow felt they had the time and they realized that the cleaning wasn't waiting for them to be home, but their crafting was. And then other ones couldn't feel like they could connect with it as well because it just felt hard. So, and none of it's right or wrong. It's just that's the reality of our experience this year and how even more diverse it is than normal. All right.
I was in the same group with Bree, and I think that it wasn't that we left scrapbooking, but that we found another creative outlet.
Yeah.
That there were multiple outlets in different ways. It was very interesting conversation that we realized that all of us in the group had each picked up a second art or craft.
That's interesting. So what all did you guys pick up?
Well, we had a couple of quilters, and then I did mixed media and watercolor. What else, Bree?
And I did embroidery for this year.
And embroidery.
Some watercolor too. All of it basically came back to color and pattern though. Like if you think about it, it basically all boiled down to the same creative type need, just in a different texture.
Sure. Right. I sewed masks.
Good.
But I had fun, collaborating those colors and coordinating them together and picking the inside color and the outside color.
Yeah. I did a few of those too.
All right, any other final observations?
When I was we were doing the last one, I was kind of like up in the air. I hadn't made any choices of what I might do differently, but in the group discussion, they came up with some very nice ideas. And I'm really thinking that participating more on Simple Scrapper events and doing more classes is what I think I'm going to do. but I didn't
Awesome.
have a clue when I went into that conversation. So
Well,
thank
that's
you.
a perfect segue. So thank you for that, because I think you'll get even more of that throughout the entire planning party experience. We're going to have some daily conversations going on where you can comment back and forth with your fellow participants, and we'll be diving into even more depth on these conversations to figure out what is it that you really need. Do you need more people? Do you need to change your format, your size? I talked on the podcast with Kim about how, you know, the InDesign Project Life book that I've been working on has come together slowly because I can only do it on my computer. So what can I do that's a little bit more mobile on my phone? So thinking about all those little nuances of what can you do to make your process a little bit easier, to make the hobby a little bit more fun, and to help you continue to connect or even reconnect with it. Now that, you know, life's a little bit different and our needs are different, and that's the way it's always been, is that, you know, things aren't constant. We're all going through different seasons of life. You know, we have sometimes we have empty nesters here in the group where you have kids going off into the world, and all of you have this time and space to approach life a little bit differently. Maybe you just had a baby and the baby's finally getting into sleep schedule, and then all of a sudden you do feel like you have yourself back again. So we all go through these different phases, and the pandemic year has just added to the nuances of the phases of our life and the seasons that we're going through, and how we cope with that and how our scrapbooking is impacted. Okay, last call, final words of wisdom. All right, thank you guys so much. This was so fun. I can't wait for next month. It is Curating Your Photos Month. And for that December conversation, we tend to focus on two different things. One, and how are you going to set your photo library up for next year? Like, what are you going to do differently to make sure that you're in control of your photos for the next year? And then we also like to talk about photo displays and photo gifts, because it is the holiday season. And what are those things that you can do to get your photos, you know, not just even out of your computer and into scrapbooks, but into the world where other people can see them as well. So think on those thoughts, and I will see you again next month. And also, if you're joining the planning party, which I hope all of you are, I can't wait to kick that off tomorrow. Everything's all queued up, ready to go, and I get to go to bed now, so I'm excited. Take care, and thanks to everyone who is watching in the replay as well. Have a great month.
Thank you, Jennifer.